Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my top 5 tips that every single Heimerdinger needs to know. My name is LolFit. I do educational content. I do mostly guides and then these quick tip type of videos, and we're getting into the donger today. For the first tip, I just wanted to go over something pretty simple, but some people might not know because there's going to be a huge influx of players playing the Heimerdinger after what he was able to accomplish in Rift Rivals EU versus NA, and just having a lot more pros trying him out will really show off his strengths and will attract some people to the champion. So, it is pretty basic, but with your W and your rocket groupings, you really want to focus right where your cursor is where all the rockets are going to converge. So you want to place it about right there and all the rockets are going to hit, as opposed to a W that's not really going to converge on the target. And see how there's a big damage difference between the two, 393 and 745. So always look to have the optimal rocket grouping, and your cursor is where your rockets are going to converge. And of course, the closer the target is, the more spread out it's going to be at long range. So that will wrap up number 1. Alright everybody, and let's jump right into number 2. Now, one of the big mistakes I see a lot of Heimerdingers do that I do not have too much experience behind them is they're using the incorrect ult. They're always relying on, oh, there's so much damage on his ult W, or oh, there's so much utility with the ult Q, it's always shooting, it has so much uptime, or they're like, oh, I should always be focusing on picks with my E. So, how you're supposed to balance this, in my opinion, is you should be looking at the game state, and you should be looking at what your team needs and what the enemy comp is. Now, if your team has a lot of CC, you guys have a Sejuani at the jungle, you have a Morgana at a support, and you got a lot of roots, you can definitely look for really good picks with your Alt W because it's already set up for you. So that's going to be the optimal time for the Alt W. In team fights where you're just really don't have that much CC, you have a Tryndamere top, you have a Zed mid, and you have just no CC coming out of the bot lane either. You really want to look for your Alt E's to give a little bit more utility to your team and set them up to do more damage, because generally carries that don't have much CC will bring a shitload of damage. So you want to augment what your team needs. And then finally, the optimal time to be using your Alt Q is when there's a lot of melee champions running around and you have a pretty prolonged team fight, and it's going to get off a lot more turret shots, and it will be more effective in the long run. So always look and know before the team fight even happens what kind of ult you want to be using. Obviously there's niche cases where it's not a big 5v5 team fight and you're just looking for a pick that you can be the most effective. So just try and use different ults at different timings and see how they work out. Alright guys, and let's jump right into number 3. Now this is a pretty obvious thing, but I don't see people taking advantage of it that often, especially in lane 1v1s where you're up against a melee matchup. Really look to take advantage of your passive with the 20% movement speed. You're at a base of 340 here with no boots on, and then once you run into the field, you get that 408, and you're able to kite people out so much more effectively. So really look to take advantage of the small amount of mobility you have in the extra 20% movement speed, and it can really force people into trying to run at you in straight lines as quick as possible, because you're going to be running faster than them. So the only way they can catch up to you is by doing a straight line and going right where they think you're going to go. So this is going to really set up your skill shots so much more when they're chasing you in that straight line trying to catch you. So always look to kite in team fights and in the lane phase as well. Alright guys, and let's jump right into number 4. Now this is a little bit of a different thing. It's not really anything micro, it is your decision making. Now this comes into play when you're in really tough matchups. They have a lot of divers and assassins. You want to balance your build a bit more towards the defensive side. Some great defensive items are of course Zhonya's, and then Rylai's, and you can even go Leandri's if you want a little bit of burn on your turrets, and they have a lot of tanks. So really look to take advantage of things based on the opponent's team comp. If they have a one big ability, things that are just keep picking you off, like a Zed ult or a Fizz You can look into things like Zonias and Banshees that both counter those very well and give you a little bit of tankiness. So in a situation where you don't really need too much defensiveness are those really strict just front to back team fights where you can just be going straight damage, just do as much as possible, where they just have a really defined backline with no divers and just two tanks in the front. You can look to take advantage of things like Merlinomicon with the Magic Pen and Rabadons and Void Staff and just really straight damage items. So really look to balance your build set for what the opponents are currently doing. This is really going to help you in laning phase if you are in a tough matchup. I know Heimer doesn't really have too many tough matchups, but I can really make the difference between getting off and like an extra grenade that turns the fight or an extra rocket that can really burst someone out. Alright, and last up, number 5, my personal favorite, the Bush Trap with Heimerdinger is so fucking effective. You can throw out so much damage and you can just easily land grenades on people that aren't ready to dodge and they aren't expecting it. So just always make sure you either grab a pink ward or you can get the sweeper. Make sure no one is around, and just really set up in a bush that is popular for people to be moving around into. It could be here if they're on the opponent's team, or there. Just the amount of damage you can throw out and the amount of picks you can get from this can really bring you back into a team fight if you find squishies, and bring you back into the game as a whole if you're a little bit behind, because this is just a great way to cheese out kills. So for example, it'd just be like something like this where you could throw your I don't know, like you could throw like a E and then you can do the W alt rockets and you can get a bunch of hits. Obviously it'd be walking in and taking a bunch of your turret autos as well. So really look to take advantage of vision control and play him like a little bit like an assassin. I know that seems like the farthest thing from his play style, but he can be super effective in these types of bush traps. And that will wrap up my 5 tips for Heimerdinger. If you guys feel like I missed something that's super important that new players should know, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm super open to all kind of feedback, and if you want me to review your NALPGG, I can do that. Or if you want some tips, just general tips on your play style, and you have a couple gameplays uploaded to YouTube, I can definitely take a look at those for you. And as always, guys, take it easy.